Okay, so I want to start today by just throwing some numbers out there that, well, they honestly don't feel real. It feels like a typo in music history.
I'm guessing you're talking about the Billboard charts.
I am. Let's just look at the Billboard Hot 100. 118. That's the number of songs that our subject today wrote or co-wrote that landed on that chart.
118.
I mean, that's not a career. That's an entire industry operating out of one person.
It is absolute saturation. And if you look across the pond to the UK charts, it's 61 hits.
61.
And get this, between 1962 and 2005, she was the single most successful female songwriter in the UK. That's a 40-year reign.
Exactly. So we're not just talking about a singer. We're not talking about a pop star in the usual sense. We're talking about a foundational architect of modern pop music. We are talking about Carole King.
Born Carole Joan Klein. And what's so fascinating about those numbers you just threw out is that for the first, decade of that dominance, the public had almost no idea who she was.
None at all.
She was the wizard behind the curtain, the invisible hand.
And that's really the core tension we're going to get into today. I've been just buried in this comprehensive biography of her life. And it feels like two completely separate stories, you know?
Oh, for sure.
You've got part one, the hit factory worker. She's in New York. She's in a cubicle. She's churning out songs like it's a manufacturing job. And then you have part two, the Laurel Canyon Earth mother, just bearing her soul for the whole world on Tapestry.
And I think the mission of our deep dive today is to really trace that path. How do you get from point A to point B? I mean, how does a teenage prodigy writing the Loco-Motion become the voice of a generation singing, "You've Got a Friend"?
It's a journey from artifice to total authenticity.
Exactly.
So let's go back to the beginning. The source code, Manhattan, 1942.
Yeah.
Carole Klein is born to a teacher and a firefighter.
A very, standard-sounding Jewish-American upbringing for the time.
On paper, yeah. But the biology,
Hmm.
the hardwiring was something else entirely. It became obvious almost immediately.
Right. The research shows that by the time she was 4 years old, her parents figured out she had absolute pitch.
And we should clarify what that means, because it's not just, oh, she has a good ear. It's a cognitive tool, isn't it?
It's a superpower. It really is. It means she could hear a car horn honk outside or a spoon hitting a glass, and she could name the exact musical note instantly.
Wow.
Her dad, Sidney, would apparently show her off to friends. It was like a parlor trick. But just think for a second what that does to a developing brain.
Right.
She wasn't just hearing songs on the radio. She was hearing the math behind them. She was hearing structure. She was deconstructing the architecture of a hit in real time as a toddler.
Which probably explains why she was so accelerated in school.
Yeah.
They promoted her directly from kindergarten to second grade. She just skipped first grade entirely.
Because she was processing information, words, numbers, music, at a different speed than her peers. And that combination, the linguistic skill and the mathematical brain, for a songwriter, that is a lethal combination.
The full toolkit.
She had the whole toolkit before she was even a teenager.
And she put it to use right away. She gets to James Madison High School in Brooklyn, which, I mean, it must have been like the Hogwarts for 50s pop music.
Seriously.
She forms a band called the Cosigns.
Which is the most perfect nerdy name ever.
It really is. And she's just hanging out, making music with this other kid from the neighborhood, a guy named Paul Simon.
It's just incredible to picture, isn't it? These two future titans of American song. Just a couple of teenagers in Brooklyn hustling. They're making demo records for $25 a session.
$25.
Yeah, they weren't sitting around waiting to be discovered. They were actively trying to kick the door down. It just shows you how fertile that whole New York scene was. Kids were literally dissecting the radio, trying to figure out how to get on it.
And speaking of getting on the radio, this brings us to the whole Oh, Carole saga.
Yeah, yes.
This feels like the exact moment her private life starts bleeding into her public professional one. So she's in high school. She's dating Neil Sedaka. Just a normal high school romance.
Except Neil Sedaka is also a musical prodigy.
Right. So it's 1959. He goes and writes, "Oh, Carole, oh, Carole, I am but a fool." And it's a massive, massive hit.
A huge hit.
Now, if that happened to me, I'd probably just crawl into a hole and never come out. But Carole, her future husband, decides to write a response.
And this is where Gerry Goffin enters the story. She met him at Queens College. He was a chemistry major, but he had a real gift for lyrics.
So he hears, "Oh, Carole," on the radio and writes this playful clapback called, "Ooh, Neil!
which Carole records. It's such a bold move.
The ultimate flex. Oh. Neil, I've loved you for so long, I never dreamed you'd put me in a song.
No, it wasn't a hit, let's be clear. But it's so significant because it establishes the template for the next 10 years of her life.
How so?
The line between her real personal life and the commercial product she's creating it dissolves. Her professional partnership with Goffin becomes completely tangled up with their romantic one.
And that partnership moves incredibly fast. They get married in 1959. She's only 17.
17 years old. And she was pregnant.
Right.
And this is a context we just can't skip over. They weren't just, a couple of kids playing at being songwriters. They had immense real-world pressure on them from day one.
They both dropped out of college.
Right. Goffin gets a job as an assistant chemist. Carole is working as a secretary. And they have a baby, their daughter Louise, on the way. The clock is ticking loudly.
So that hustle we mentioned before, making demos, it wasn't for fun anymore. It was about survival. It was about paying the rent. They're writing songs at night after their day jobs, totally exhausted, just trying to crack the code.
And in 1960, they crack it wide open, Will You Love Me Tomorrow?
Through the Shirelles.
And it changed everything. I mean, historically, it is a landmark song. It was the first ever #1 hit by a black girl group on the Billboard charts.
Which is huge.
It's massive. But for Goffin and King on a personal level, the significance was purely economic. It meant they could walk into their jobs the next day and say, we quit.
And that is the moment that launches them into the legendary Hit Factory era.
Yeah.
1650 Broadway.
Yeah, people always say the Brill building, and technically it was across the street, but it was the same world, the same ecosystem.
And I really want to paint a picture of this place because it is so different from how music gets made today.
Oh, it's a different planet. It was an assembly line, and I mean that in the most literal sense possible.
So you'd have all these songwriters in one building.
Picture a honeycomb, just a hive of tiny, soundproofed or not so soundproofed cubicles. Each one has a piano, an ashtray, and a team of songwriters. You've got Goffin and King in one, Leiber and Stoller in another, Barry and Greenwich down the hall.
And they're coming in every day like it's a 9-to-5 job.
Exactly. This wasn't about waiting for inspiration to strike. This was, hey, Bobby V needs a hit by Friday. Go write it. It was noisy. It was competitive. It was unbelievably high pressure. You could literally hear the team in the next room writing a better hook than you were.
And the music that Goffin and King produced during this time, I mean, the sheer variety is what's so baffling to me.
It's stunning.
I was looking at the list. They write the Loco-Motion for their babysitter, Little Eva.
Right. Pure bubblegum. It's a dance craze novelty song. Fun, but disposable.
But then, almost in the same breath, they write, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman for Aretha Franklin.
And that's the leap that just floors me every time I think about it.
Right.
Think about the kind of musical empathy that requires. Here's Carole King, a young Jewish woman from Brooklyn. How does she manage to tap into that deep, gospel-inflected, emotionally profound soul architecture that Aretha Franklin could then step into so perfectly?
It's like she wasn't just writing for them. It was like she was channeling them.
She was a chameleon, a total chameleon. She understood the theory, the math we talked about so deeply that she could switch genres like she was changing coats.
She could do the sort of Beatles-esque pop of chains.
Which the Beatles then covered, by the way.
Exactly. And then she could pivot and write this sharp suburban critique like Pleasant Valley Sunday for the Monkees.
Pleasant Valley Sunday is such a great example because it's so subversive.
They'd moved out to the suburbs by then, right? West Orange, New Jersey.
They had. They were living the post-war suburban dream. The lawnmower, the charcoal grill, the rows of houses that all look the same. And they were miserable.
So they took that feeling.
And they smuggled it into this incredibly catchy, jangling pop song for a manufactured TV band. The lyrics are a scathing takedown of their own consumerist lifestyle. Rows of houses that are all the same and no one seems to care. It's brilliant.
But that suburban dissatisfaction, it was really a symptom of much deeper problems in their life. By 1968, the Goffin-King marriage and the partnership, it's falling apart.
And we have to see 1968 not just as, a date in their biography, but as this huge cultural moment. The whole world was fracturing. You have the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy. You have the Vietnam protests escalating. The whole bright-eyed optimism of the early 60s, the Will You Love Me Tomorrow era, was over. It felt like it was dead. And Goffin and King's divorce, it really mirrors that larger national split.
So the marriage ends, and King makes a decision that basically defines the entire next chapter of her life. She packs up her 2 daughters, and she moves to Laurel Canyon, Los Angeles.
This is the Great Migration. It's so symbolic. She's trading the concrete and the business suits of 1650 Broadway for the eucalyptus trees, the denim, and the acoustic guitars of Laurel Canyon.
It's a perfect parallel for this shift in the music industry itself.
Absolutely. We were moving away from that New York pop factory model and into the era of the introspective West Coast singer-songwriter.
But here's the thing. She didn't just land in L.A. and immediately say, okay, I'm a solo artist. No, she was actually terrified of performing.
Oh, deeply. She had crippling stage fright. She still saw herself as a composer, a background player, so she formed a band called The City with Charles Larkey, who would become her second husband, and the guitarist Danny Korchmar.
And they put out an album in 1968, now that everything's been said.
Which is a fantastic record, by the way.
It is. It's great.
Yeah.
And absolutely nobody bought it.
Because she refused to tour. And in 1968, if you don't get on stage and play the songs, you can't sell the record. It's as simple as that. The album was deleted almost immediately. It's a cult classic now, but at the time, it was a complete commercial failure.
So, The City breaks up. She's kind of licking her wounds. And then in 1970, she releases her first proper solo album called Writer.
And just note that title for a second, Writer.
Right.
She is still clinging to that identity. I'm a writer who just happens to be singing my own songs. But you can feel the pieces starting to click into place on that album.
And a key piece is James Taylor.
Oh, absolutely. He plays acoustic guitar on the album, sings backup vocals. But he's more than just a session musician. He's a friend, a collaborator, a catalyst. He's the one encouraging her, pushing her to own her voice.
So Writer comes out. It charts at number 84. It's a respectable start.
Yeah.
But then 1971 happens, and the dam just breaks. Tapestry.
The album that basically changed the entire DNA of popular music.
And we really need to spend some time here because it's so easy to just say, oh, it was a huge hit and move on. But the scale of its success it's almost impossible to comprehend today.
It's staggering. It was #1 on the charts for 15 consecutive weeks. It stayed on the Billboard charts for over 6 years.
6 years.
And it sold over 30 million copies worldwide.
And the Grammys. It just swept the Grammys. Album of the Year, Song of the Year. She was the first woman ever to win Song of the Year for You've Got a Friend. But the question is why? What was it about this specific collection of songs at this specific moment in 1971? Because when you listen to it now, compared to what else was on the radio, you know, Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, big bombastic rock Tapestry sounds, kind of small.
That is exactly the point. That's the secret. It sounds like a demo. The producer, Lou Adler, made a very conscious decision.
To keep it simple?
To keep it bone dry. There's no big reverb, no wall of sound, no string section swooping in. He put the microphone right up close to her mouth and right up close to the piano hammers. So when you listen to Tapestry, sonically, physically, it feels like Carole King is in your living room, sitting on the floor, playing for you.
It's incredibly intimate.
Hyper intimate. And you have to think about the timing. After the chaos and the noise of the late 60s, the protests, the violence, the political turmoil, America didn't want another stadium rock anthem. They wanted a friend to sit down and say, hey, I'm hurting too. This is what it feels like.
You can really hear that in how she reinterprets her own old songs. She puts Will You Love Me Tomorrow on the album.
But just listen to the two versions back to back. The Shirelles version is this upbeat, anxious, but ultimately danceable teenage plea.
Right. Tonight's the night.
Exactly.
Right.
On Tapestry, she slows it way, way down. The piano is heavy, almost somber. The backing vocals from Joni Mitchell and James Taylor are like these haunting echoes. It transforms from a high school question into a weary adult meditation on loneliness and vulnerability.
She's looking back at her own creation from a decade earlier and saying, this means something totally different to me now.
She's reclaiming it.
And then there's a song like It's Too Late.
A masterpiece of emotional maturity.
That's the word that keeps coming to my mind with this whole album, maturity. Most breakup songs, especially then, were either I hate you and I'm better off or please, please come back.
Yeah, full of anger or desperation.
It's Too Late is neither of those things.
No. The lyric is, one of us is changing, or maybe we've just stopped trying. There's no villain. There's no blame. There's just a sad, quiet, dignified acknowledgement that a feeling has expired. That is an emotional state that millions of adults understood, but that pop music had rarely ever articulated before.
And of course, we have to talk about You've Got a Friend, because this is such a unique moment in music history. You have the songwriter and the cover artist having massive hits with the same song at the exact same time.
It's the ultimate testament to that Laurel Canyon community spirit. James Taylor was in the next studio recording his album Mud Slide Slim while Carole was making Tapestry.
They were sharing musicians.
Sharing musicians, sharing ideas, singing on each other's records. King always said she didn't write the song for James Taylor, but when he heard it, he immediately knew he had to record it.
And his version goes to #1.
While her version is on the album that is sitting at #1, it was just this blanket of comfort that covered the entire world that year, a ubiquity of friendship.
So, okay, you've just released arguably the biggest, most impactful album of the entire era. Time magazine is calling you the Queen of Rock. How in the world do you follow that up?
That's the curse of the masterpiece, isn't it? Everything you do for the rest of your life is going to be compared to Tapestry. But to her credit, she didn't choke. She didn't freeze up. She just kept working.
She put out Carole King.
Right.
Music later that same year in '71.
And it went to #1. Then Wraparound Joy in 1974 also went to #1. She proved it wasn't a fluke. She proved she could still write hits.
And the song Jasmine comes out of that period, which for a whole generation is probably best known from The Simpsons.
Chuckles, yes. Bleeding Gums, Murphy, and Lisa Simpson. It gave her this whole second life with a younger audience.
But the real coronation moment for her as a performer had to be May of 1973, Central Park.
Oh, yeah. The prodigal daughter returns to New York City.
She plays a free concert on the Great Lawn. And the photos are just incredible.
An absolute sea of humanity. The estimates are at least 100,000 people showed up. It was this massive homecoming moment. It was the ultimate proof that she had made that transition. She wasn't the shy writer from Brooklyn anymore. She was a genuine stadium-filling icon.
But even as her career was hitting these incredible new highs, her personal life was heading into a very dark period. We have to talk about the Rick Evers era.
We do. And it's a difficult chapter in her story. She married Rick Evers in the mid-'70s, and they moved to this very remote part of Idaho.
They collaborated on an album, Simple Things.
They did, but the reality behind that rustic back-to-the-land image was awful. In her memoir, A Natural Woman, she revealed that Evers was physically abusive.
It's just such a jarring contrast. Here's the woman who wrote the global anthem for friendship and support, and she's living in this isolated cabin, being controlled and hurt by a violent man.
It's a really powerful reminder that the empowered icon we see on stage is a public persona. The human being behind it can be suffering, can be vulnerable.
And the end of that story is just tragic. Evers died of a cocaine overdose in 1978, only days after they had separated.
And that period was a professional low point for her as well, wasn't it? I remember Rolling Stone called Simple Things the worst album of 1977.
Which just feels unnecessarily cruel.
It was incredibly harsh, but musically, the ground was shifting again. Punk was exploding in London and New York. Disco was at its peak. That soft rock, sensitive singer-songwriter sound was starting to feel a little bit dated to the critics.
But Carole King is, if nothing else, a survivor. She reinvented herself once to get from New York to Laurel Canyon, and now, moving into the 80s and 90s, she does it again. She kind of steps away from chasing pop hits and starts weaving herself into the broader fabric of pop culture.
It's a really smart pivot. For instance, did you know she wrote all the music for Maurice Sendek's animated special, Really Rosie?
I loved that show as a kid. I had no idea.
She even voiced the main character. That's Carole King's voice, that sassy New York kid. It's brilliant. And then, this is the one that really blows people's minds. She wrote and performed the theme song for the 1985 Care Bears movie.
Wait, what? The Care Bears?
Care-a-Lot. That's her. It just proves that a great melody is a great melody. She can write about the deepest, most adult heartbreak, and she can write a theme song for magical, rainbow-colored bears. The fundamental craft never, ever left her.
But I think for millennials, the big pop culture touchstone has to be Gilmore Girls.
Where You Lead, of course.
Now, this is such an interesting story because she was basically rewriting her own history with that song. It was originally on Tapestry.
It was. But after a few years, she grew really uncomfortable with the lyrics and stopped performing it.
Why?
Well, the song goes, "Where you lead, I will follow." And in the mid-'70s, with the rise of the women's liberation movement, that sentiment started to feel, well, a bit subservient. Like a woman diminishing herself to follow a man.
So how does it become the iconic theme song for Lorelai and Rory Gilmore, who are some of the most fiercely independent women ever on television?
She completely recontextualized it. She re-recorded it as a duet with her own daughter, Louise Goffin. And suddenly, the you in the song isn't a romantic partner. The you is your mother or your daughter.
It becomes a statement of familial loyalty.
Fierce familial loyalty. It changes the entire emotional core of the song without changing a single word. It was an act of pure genius.
And she was even on the show. She played Sophie, the grumpy music store owner.
Who famously did not like anyone touching the guitars. A very funny little meta joke for those who knew who she was.
Okay, let's jump forward to 2010. We get the Troubadour reunion tour. This feels like the ultimate victory lap.
It was huge. It was celebrating the 50th anniversary of the club, where she and James Taylor really first played together and became friends. They toured the world.
And it was massively successful.
It grossed over $59 million. It proved that this music wasn't just nostalgia, it was durable. It had lasted for half a century and still resonated just as deeply.
I want to circle back to her life in Idaho for a moment, because we mentioned it in the context of Rick Evers, but she stayed there.
Yeah.
After all that trauma, she didn't just run back to L.A.
No, she dug in. She committed to that life. She lived in a tiny town called Stanley, Idaho, and this wasn't, some fancy celebrity ranch with a staff. For years, she was living in a cabin heated by a wood stove. She was truly living off the grid.
And that deep connection to the wilderness turned her into a really serious environmental activist.
And it wasn't just, writing a check. It wasn't lip service. She got involved with a group called the Alliance for the Wild Rockies. She testified before Congress on Capitol Hill 3 separate times, lobbying for the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act.
She does the work.
She approaches activism the same way she approached songwriting in the Brill building. She does the homework. She learns the policy. She masters the details.
And she's been very politically active as well. She campaigned for John Kerry, for Hillary Clinton, for Barack Obama. But I just love the image of her at the 2017 Women's March. Not in D.C. or L.A., but in Stanley, Idaho.
Marching through the snow with a handmade sign.
And the sign just said, "One small voice."
Perfect.
Which brings us to the accolades. Because despite her desire to be one small voice, the establishment has showered her with pretty much every major award you can get.
I think the most telling one, the one that really captures her unique story, is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because she's been inducted twice.
Right. First with Gerry Goffin.
In 1990 as a non-performer for her songwriting, and then again in 2021 as a solo artist.
That double induction is the perfect summary of this whole deep dive, really. It validates both halves of her life, the hit factory worker and the singular artist.
Exactly. She won the game by the industry's old rules, and then she went and read a whole new set of rules and won that game too.
And she received the Gershwin Prize from the Library of Congress.
The first woman ever to receive it. That puts her in the company of Paul Simon, Stevie Wonder, the absolute pantheon of American songwriters.
And we can't leave out Beautiful, the Broadway musical about her life.
Which ran for 6 years, won Tony Awards. It took the incredible story we're telling today and turned it into this hit show that introduced her music and her journey to a whole new generation.
So let's try to pull this all together. We started with that staggering number, 118 hits.
Yeah.
But when you look at the complete arc of Carole King's life and career, what's the central narrative here? What's the takeaway?
For me, I think it's about the democratization of the artistic voice. She started her career as a kind of ventriloquist.
That's a great way to put it.
She was putting her words and her melodies into other people's mouths. The Shirelles, the Monkees, Aretha Franklin, and she was, arguably, the greatest musical ventriloquist of all time.
But eventually, the puppet master had to step out from behind the curtain.
She did. She realized that her own voice, with all its imperfections and its vulnerability, was actually the voice that people were waiting to hear. She bridged that gap between the polished, professional Brill-building craftsman and the raw, confessional poet. She proved you could be both a master technician and a true artist.
She stripped away all the artifice. And that leads me right to my final thought for you, for everyone listening today.
What's that?
Carole King's massive, world-changing breakthrough with Tapestry happened because she did the opposite of what a pop star is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
She took off the makeup, she sat at a piano, she kept the production simple, and she just sang her truth. It was quiet, it was unpolished, it was real.
Yeah.
So my question is this. In today's music landscape, which is so dominated by TikTok trends, by auto-tune, by branding, by everything being filtered and focus grouped to within an inch of its life, could an album like Tapestry even happen today?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Do we, as a culture, still have the patience for that kind of quiet, living room authenticity to become a global phenomenon?
I really hope the answer is yes. But until we find out, we will always have the original. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure, as always.